Americans for Fair Taxation presents the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, president of Americans for Fair Taxation, and recorded by Bob Paxton, a volunteer with the Florida Fair Tax Educational Association. And now, this week's Chairman's Report.
Hello, I'm Bob Paxton with the AFFT Chairman's Report for Friday, October 14th, 2022. How long would it take for Diogenes to find an honest man in Washington, D.C.? Diogenes was a Greek philosopher who died in Corinth in 323 BC. He made a virtue of poverty and was famous for carrying a lantern as he went through each town he was visiting, looking for an honest man. Now, if Diogenes was somehow able to visit today's Washington, D.C., how long do you think it would take him to find an honest man or woman within the ruling class, their minions in Congress, and the bureaucracy? Now, just what do we mean by an honest man or woman? We mean someone who is truthful about why they continue to prop up an obviously failed income payroll tax system when there's a vastly superior alternative available to them. Now, are they really so blind that they honestly don't recognize all of the problems with the present income payroll tax system? Not likely. Are they really so oblivious that they don't recognize the tremendous benefits that the fair tax would bestow on individual taxpayers in the country as a whole? Again, highly unlikely. If these people were really honest about why they refuse to replace the income payroll tax system with the fair tax, they'd have to say, well, the income tax lets us punish any group that opposes us politically or that we just don't like the Tea Party groups who were illegally denied tax exemptions by Lois Lerner's group at the IRS. We can raise lots of campaign cash by selling favorable tax treatment to special interests. Because of its complexity, the income tax system requires a lot of manpower to administer and enforce it. That means there are lots of jobs in the bureaucracy that we can fill with our friends and allies. And finally, this new army of IRS agents that we just authorized will give us even more control over people than we already have. With more IRS auditors at our disposal, we can make life miserable for more and more people who oppose our policies or who would dare to stand up against us. A surprising indictment. Now, history has shown that the power brokers in D.C. protect their own and the minions that carry out their orders. If we break the law, we get prosecuted. But we've seen way too many elites break the law and escape prosecution entirely. Instead, if anything happens to them at all, they just get suspended for a while with full pay. Now, if the crime attracts too much public attention, then the wrongdoer is allowed to retire with full pension. That's what happened when Lois Lerner was caught illegally denying tax-exempt status to groups that she disagreed with. This is why it was rather surprising to see this Department of Justice press release. The release is entitled, 5 Current or Former IRS Employees Charged with Defrauding Federal COVID-19 Relief Programs. The release stated, the IRS employees charged in these cases allegedly abused the trust placed in them by the public, said Assistant Attorney General Kenneth A. Polite, Jr. of the Justice Department's Criminal Division. The Criminal Division is committed to safeguarding that public trust and protecting pandemic relief programs for the American people. According to court documents, the defendants allegedly obtained funds under the PPP and EIDL programs by submitting false and fraudulent loan applications that collectively sought over $1 million. Then they used the loan funds for purposes not authorized by the PPP or EIDL programs. Instead, the money went for cars, luxury goods, and personal travel, including trips to Las Vegas. These individuals, acting out of pure greed, abused their positions by taking government funds meant for citizens and businesses who desperately needed it, said U.S. Attorney Kevin G. Ritz of the Western District of Tennessee. I thank our law enforcement partners for rooting out this fraud, and our office will not hesitate to pursue and charge individuals who steal from our nation's taxpayers. The 5 individuals charged are Brian Salisbury, age 46, of Memphis, Tennessee. He's charged with 2 counts of wire fraud and 2 counts of money laundering. According to the indictment, Salisbury submitted 4 fraudulent EIDL program applications seeking at least $501,400 in EIDL program loans and obtaining $171,400 in loan funds. Salisbury allegedly spent a portion of the funds on a Mercedes-Benz and deposited additional funds into a personal investment account. Courtney Quincy Westmoreland, 38, of Cordova, Tennessee, is charged with 3 counts of wire fraud. According to the indictment, Westmoreland submitted multiple fraudulent PPP and EIDL program applications on behalf of a purported apparel business for which she sought at least $32,500 in loans and obtained $11,500 in loan funds. Westmoreland allegedly used these funds for personal services, including manicures and massages, and to purchase luxury clothing. In addition, while employed full-time by the IRS, Westmoreland allegedly submitted fraudulent applications for unemployment insurance benefits to the Tennessee Department of Labor, in which she falsely claimed she was not employed by the federal government. According to court documents, Westmoreland fraudulently obtained $16,050 in unemployment insurance benefits. Patina Hewitt, 35, of Olive Branch, Mississippi, is charged with 1 count of wire fraud. Hewitt was employed by the IRS as a management and program assistant in information technology. According to the information, Hewitt submitted multiple fraudulent EIDL program applications on behalf of a purported fashion business seeking $338,900 in EIDL program loans and obtaining $28,900 in loan funds. Court documents allege that Hewitt spent the loan funds on Gucci clothing and a trip to Las Vegas. On October 4, 2022, Hewitt pleaded guilty to 1 count of wire fraud. Roderick DeMarco White II, 27, of Memphis, is charged with 1 count of wire fraud. White was employed by the IRS as a contact representative in the Wage and Investment Services Centers Department. According to the information, White submitted 4 fraudulent PPP and EIDL program applications on behalf of a purported apparel business, seeking $113,311 in PPP and EIDL program loans and obtaining $66,666 in loan funds. White allegedly spent the funds on personal items, including a Gucci satchel. On August 25, 2022, White pleaded guilty to 1 count of wire fraud. Tina Humes, age 56, of Memphis, Tennessee, charged with 1 count of wire fraud. Humes was employed by the IRS as a lead management and program assistant in the Human Capital Office. According to the information, Humes submitted 4 fraudulent PPP and EIDL program applications seeking $133,812 in loans and obtaining $123,612 in loan funds. Humes allegedly spent the funds on jewelry and trips to Las Vegas. On July 27, 2022, Humes pleaded guilty to 1 count of wire fraud. Now, each count of wire fraud carries a maximum penalty of 20 years in prison, and each count of money laundering carries a maximum penalty of 10 years in prison. In conclusion, while the 5 IRS employees have not been found guilty, the fact that they were indicted must have shocked most of the ruling class and their minions in D.C. However, it's likely that most bureaucrats in D.C. are still not too worried. After all, these indicted IRS agents were caught stealing money. They didn't violate any other laws where no money changed hands. These bureaucrats know that to this day, no one has been charged in the leak of confidential income tax returns. Why? Because, like those of Lois Lerner, this was an action that the D.C. powers approved of and agreed with. Now, yes, the leaking of confidential tax information is illegal and unethical, but no money was actually stolen, so that's different, isn't it? We would do well to remember this admonition from Thomas Sowell, Senior Fellow at the Hoover Institute. It's hard to imagine a more stupid or more dangerous way of making decisions than by putting those decisions in the hands of people who pay no price for being wrong. The answer is simple. Eliminate the IRS and the income payroll tax system and enact the fair tax. The income tax system is broken. It's no longer working. We can't repair it, but we can replace it with the fair tax. The fair tax will allow Americans to take back control over their government and their lives. Join us and take back control of our country and our lives, not with bullets, but with the elimination of one of the biggest threats to our liberty and economic prosperity, the income payroll tax. We should also remember Edmund Burke's warning that applies to our efforts to take back control. Nobody made a greater mistake than he who did nothing because he could only do a little. We should also remember this quote from George Orwell's 1984, which, if we do nothing, may foretell your and your children's future. If you want a picture of the future, imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever. So what can each of us do? We can write letters and make calls to our elected representatives and attend Zoom town hall meetings demanding that if they really want to allow Americans to take back control, the first step is to eliminate the income payroll tax system and enact the fair tax. Take back control. Help us pass the fair tax. The IRS will be gone and we'll pay our taxes when we make purchases. We, not the ruling class and their minions in D.C., will decide how much federal tax we pay. And we'll know how much tax we're paying because taxes will no longer be hidden from us. They'll be clearly shown on every retail receipt. If you have friends who don't know about the fair tax, send them to fairtax.org. Have them watch the whiteboards under how it works, and if they agree, ask them to please join us. Then, contact your members of Congress and the President and demand that Congress pass the fair tax, the only truly fair tax.
This has been the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, President of Americans for Fair Taxation. Check back every week for news and information about the fair tax, and learn why the fair tax should replace our antiquated federal income tax system. If you'd like to receive a copy of the Chairman's Report in your inbox every week, sign up at fairtax.org.